Thank you very much. Can you hear me properly? And I'm not making too much higher? Is that better? And not too much echo? Okay, good. Okay, first of all, I would like to say thank you very much for the organisers of Symposium for inviting me here today. It was very wonderful to be back again in Zutphen, and also in this wonderful church dedicated to Saint Walburga, an English saint. Now, I don't know how much you can see of the PowerPoints behind me, but behind me, for those who can't see, is a scene of a very tranquil looking village. It's the town of Dragør as it looks like today. This is my own photo from a couple of years ago. Now, Dragør in the 18th and 19th century was one of the most important parts of Denmark. It was the second largest port in the volume of ships coming backwards and forwards, and then fell into a kind of time warp as the age of steam overtook it. This has meant that the city, or the town today, is very, very well preserved and is currently looking for UNESCO World Heritage Site. But there's another side to Dragør, and this is one that you all know and are interested about, and that's the medieval side of Dragør. And before I go further, I have to say that for anybody working with the history of Dragør, three people are very important. The first one is Professor Carsten Janker, who is sitting here, and his work on the herring trade, including Dragør. The second is Niels Liebgott, former director of National Museum, who did the so far only proper excavation in Dragør in 1974 in a place called Zutphen. And thirdly, Christian Nicolaisen, who was active in the turn of the 20th century. He was a local historian and a postman, and his encyclopedic knowledge as a postman helped him understand the layout of the town. His unceasing archival work helped put the basis of pretty much every single work on Dragør since, so everybody owes him a debt. So the map here, for those of you who can see, it's just showing some of the most important sites in the Danish realm connected with the herring markets in the Middle Ages. Okay, maybe you can't see, but one has to understand that the Danish realm in the Middle Ages is both sides of the Øresund. It's what's now modern-day Scania and Holland and Blekinge, as well as Denmark itself. And the development of Dragør in the Øresund, Dragør is 10 kilometers south of Copenhagen. It's also tied in with other cities and other places in the area as well, including Malmö, Helsingborg, Copenhagen itself, and other places. So the Skanderborg and Falsterbo markets, which are much better known, just a very brief description. From the 12th century, there were some small fishing settlements, and around 1200, Lübeck starts trading for herring. And later, traders and fishermen from Denmark, the Hanseatic cities, Teutonic Order, and England start to trade there as well. Each city had its own Vitten, its own extraterritorial area, and at its peak, it could be estimated, and these vary from anything from 30,000 to 80,000 people, probably more towards the lower end, but is still unsure. And this market declined in the 16th century. Now, in 1251, we'll go back a bit in time, and to understand Dutch merchants coming over to Denmark in the first place. King Abel I granted access to the Danish markets to what are called omlandsfarer. And you can't really see here, but around the top of Denmark is a way to travel round. It's very dangerous. A lot of shipwrecks happen around there, but still it's possible. And Professor Carsten Janker explained earlier today why they managed to do this. So already in 1251, in September, there is a privilege. The Kampen had the right to go to a Skanor market, and merchants be exempt from tolls on cloth, linen, salt, and food products to be sold, and each ship leaving the market had to pay a toll of 32 shillings. And here's the charter, which is held in the Stadsarchiv in Kampen. Now we move forward a century to King Valdemar IV Atterdag and the Dragør market. Now, there'd been a small settlement at Dragør since the Viking Age. The name Drag and is like a small sandy or gravelly beach. So it's basically where boats were put up. There is no natural harbour or in Drava. It is just a place where you pull boats up to. Now, King Valdemar had, in a series of wars, had fought against the Counts of Holstein and also the King of Sweden, and had lost a lot of the land to these people, and well, his father had, and he reclaimed the land gradually. In the Battle of Copenhagen in 1342, he set up a new market at Drava with privileges and reconfirmation of the old rights to the Skåne markets. And the first charter was the Stralsund, 10th of August that year. Kampen got their charter 5 days later. What's important to understand is that the Skåne markets lay in the hands of King Magnus IV Eriksson of Sweden. So Valdemar doesn't have any rights to the Skåne markets, so he has to set up a rival market. So then, and Magnus IV had already given Kampen privileges to a Skåne market in 1341. So now Kampen has two sets of privileges to the same market and a set of privileges to the new market as well at the same time. But in 1360, Valdemar reconquered Skåne and also then the herring markets on the now Swedish side of the Øresund belonged to Valdemar. However, the Drava market had grown up, and so it in itself was valuable. And so now he had two sets of markets, one on either side. Here's the charter from Valdemar, 1342, from Kampen. So in the Drava market, there was the ships paid a flat tax of 2 skånska marks on the cargo it took from Drava. So therefore, the economic activity of the market was untaxed. And so it was allowed the movement of goods between the market and the fishing area. So by making a one-off time tax on each boat, it encouraged mercantile activity and allowed the market to run on relatively minimum supervision. So it's legal rights, import and export rights, salvage rights. Also a right to a vita, just as in Skanor, where you could carry out various crafts, process canvas, meat, bread, leather, and also carry out all types of business practice. And each city could have their own bailiffs in the vita. So basically this was an area under their own law. And this is the privileges to zutphen in 1346, which is given on the 10th of October of that year. I can't see the map here, but basically it's showing cities trading to the Drava market. There's actually a few I missed out, but mainly it's in the Netherlands, it's Kampen, Deventer, Zutphen, and then there are a lot of cities of what is Pomerania and the southern coast of the Baltic Sea. And the map of the Drava market, which I've put up here, is actually on the boards over there. So afterwards you can have a look yourself if you can't see what it's showing there. Now the herring fishing, as Kastanjanka explained yesterday, the medieval church required abstination from meat many days of the year. I put a quarter, but it should actually be a half. And the herring was fished primarily between St. Bartholomew's Day on the 24th of August and St. Dionysus' Day on the 9th of October. And this is a picture here of the unloading, preparing the herring. And this is one of the barrels. So Christian's already explained very well about barrels. So just to show that they also had barrels there and the merchant marks on the barrels. This is in the Falsterbo Museum. So the cogs would sail to Drava, as in other places. There's a report in 1406 where the merchant Johan van der Merche says it takes 8 days to go from Torun to Drava. And a 1423 letter from Lübeck to Wismar talks of a ship with 19¼ tons of herring to Drava. And we also see that ships were bought at the market, and that we even have a name of a ship from 1471 named the Valentine. Now, on the 20th of October 1395, a meeting in Lübeck occurred with the Hanseatic cities concerning the Italian Bruder, who were pirates in the Baltic Sea. And included in this meeting was that Kampen and other Dutch cities should provide 2 ships to protect the route to Drahwa. And each of these ships was to have 100 armed men, and 30 of these were to be bowmen with powerful crossbows. And the following year, a meeting of ships captains at Danzig called to find ways to stop pirates operating from the base in Visby on the island of Gotland, who sailed past Drahwa on their way to attack shipping. So the market in Drahwa suffered piracy as well. Now, in the trade itself, we have the Fundsoldbücher, 1398 to 1400, paid on shipping, which funded these peace ships. And this allowed for a record of tolls paid, number of charters per ship, barrels, sold goods, and captains' names. So the biggest part of this activity was a trade in herring. So in 1400, you could see that Lübeck was importing almost 9,500 barrels of herring, and each barrel had 1,000 herring within it, so 9.5 million herring, while only importing 63 barrels of butter. However, significant trade at Drahwa also include luxury imported goods, such as wine, spices, as well as the locally produced goods, such as butter and cheese. And there's something about herring export to Lübeck, which you can see if you have a look at my PowerPoint later. So I'll go to the cloth trade, one of these other trades first. And as well as cloth, the merchants also brought with them in smaller numbers linen, woolens, grey cloth, flax and hemp. And in this time period, 1398 to 1400, or the records, there's roughly between 300 to 400 pieces of cloth brought back from Drahwa to Lübeck. So, for example, you see in 1400, the merchant Johann Cotain travelled to Drahwa with 2 turlings or 20 to 30 pieces of cloth and returned with 1. So obviously he must have sold some. In the same year, we see the merchant Fidiger Vidikau sailing to Drahwa with 1 turling of cloth and coming back with 9. And many finds of cloth seals in the archaeological excavations in Stackhelm show the trade there. And here is one of the cloth seals from Kampen. Beer and wine, as we've already been talked about, so I'll only say just a very brief bit, but beer and wine was also an important part of the trade there. Wine, of course, being a luxury item, but also needs to be used in Christian ceremonies. And here we have the Siegerberg stoneware jug, which was found in the excavations. Other items that are sold in the market were locally sourced goods from Denmark: wheat, rye, malt, butter, cheese, meat, animal fat, tallow, lamb fleeces, skins, pigs, horses, all of this. But also the trade in iron, both raw and in various products. So the most common iron product was mentioned is the osmond, which is a type of wrought iron made in the shape of a ball. And this is produced in Östergötland, Västmanland, Dalarna and Småland in Sweden, but also from Westphalia in Germany. Also it included forest produce, which was timber, wood ash, furs and nuts, and sometimes timber produce, which is already processed. One cargo, for example, mentions ready-made boards for a ship and 200 split log oak logs. And a final produce was luxury items like olive oil, spices and dyes, and this must have come up through the various trade networks from Venice and then up through there eventually to the market in Drahwa. Now, being in the church, I have to mention something of religious life of the market. The first, in the centre of the island of Amma, there is a church called Tornbu, which was already became a church in the 12th century. But in 1370, a church appeared in Stormaulabu. Stormaulabu is 4 kilometres away from Drahwa, and this was built up with a market. There is actually still surviving for a Danzig merchant, Johannes de Baken, who was buried there in 1409. In 1401, we can see that Franciscans in Stettin have an altar at Drahwa. And in 1427, the Butenkerk in Kampen has a chalice and chasuble which are being used at Drahwa. 1436, the Augustinian hermits in Stargard have a chapel in Drahwa. And in 1449, the Bishop of Roskilde, under whose diocese the market lay, allowed an altar to be used at the market. 1488, the Dominicans in Roskilde had a chapel at Drahwa. And in 1493, the Franciscans had a chapel, which was then used as the town church. So the housing at the market The excavations in Drahwa in 1974 revealed several stages of housing, 4 in total. So 1350 to 1420, temporary houses were being used of all different types. The Danish example would be this. This is from herring fishing in Lolland, an island south of Copenhagen, from the 19th century. The first border, first stalls were mentioned in 1390. The first main street, Nieuwenstraten, is named in 1412. And around circa 1420, there is a change for more timbered houses, especially in the area of the excavation. This ties in very much with the reign of Erik of Pomerania, who started to develop the Øresund region, settling new cities, such as Landskrona, and also expanding harbours in existence, such as the Danish city of Kua. The market would have had guild houses, administration and taverns. We know in Skanor and Falsterbro they both had castles, and Drahwa has what's called a skanse, like a small fort called Skjolden, the shield, in 1455. We know at least in houses in Skanor market have such evocative names as the Three Herrings, the Lord's Fortress, the Virgin and the Owl and Bagpipe. We can rather hope that something similar existed in Drahwa as well. But the people of the market, Diederik Brandt, Mayor of Kampen, he didn't have anything to do with the Drahwa market, but I used him as an image because his gravestone is rather nice and was actually in Kampen a couple of years ago in the museum. But in 1389, Andrea Holbeck, the advocato of the Drahwa market, works with Johanna Absalonis, captain of Copenhagen Castle, and this is where the administration from Copenhagen is relevant to the market itself. A local person, possibly, in 1412, Walter van Zutphen, sells a border to Albrecht Hagemaster for 14 marks to be paid the following year on Easter Day. Women's upward merchants, but it's not really the right thing, but women did certainly at least sell these border, the market stalls, or a space where the market stall should be. We have Margrethe Busemester, who sells a border to the Knights Hospitaller. Also, the religious orders owned border in Drahwa as well. But in the Count's War, the civil war in Denmark for the Danish Reformation, Drahwa was burnt down. A late flourishing of the market occurred in 1550 to 1570, and merchants would still come to the market up to the 17th century, but the glory days were gone. There was, of course, the renewal in the late 18th century, but this is not renewal of the same market. However, there is a postscript to this story that I want to mention. I think it'd be quite interesting as with a Dutch context. Now, King Christian II had a mistress named Duvica, who came from Amsterdam, and her mother, Sigrid Willems, became the king's trusted advisor. And a plan began between Christian II and Sigrid to farm the fertile island of Amager around Drahwa with Dutch settlers. Key mediator was somebody I talked about yesterday, Pompeius Occo, a merchant in Amsterdam who worked for the House of Frugge. And so in 1518, two brothers, Peter and Gerbrand Dirks, goldsmiths, were invited to Denmark to make jewellery for the king. The following year, Dutch farmers from Hoorn, under the guidance of Master Peter Goldsmith, travelled to Amager. The year after that, in 1520, Christian II sent a letter to Peter Goldsmith, and more than 100 men with their wives and children travelled to Amager. 1521, privileges were granted to the Dutch in Stormoulebu, where the church was, and which then began known as Hollanderburen, the city or the town of the Dutch. And in that year, a register has 164 Dutch names on Amager. And the colony was managed by a Schout, who was based in Stormoulebu, and it was only in 1857 that this part of Amager was actually brought under Danish municipal law. And here we have, if you can see it, a painting from the wonderful artist Julius Exner of a bride from Hollanderburen in 1867. And here is a picture of a feast of the Dutch settlers in Amager, as he saw it then in 1854. Now here we come basically to Zutphensgade. So Zutphensgade is not a name, it's not the old name of the streets, but it is a name which was given by Christian Nicolaisen. He really promoted the idea that Drahwa should be proud and remember its heritage of the markets which happened so many years ago. And so the names started to change, and he was instrumental in having the names, and that's why you have Zutphensgade today. And say this is a picture from like roughly 100 years ago. There's still much more work to be done. As I said, there's only been one major excavation on the island. There's still more research to be done in all of the different records that we have to find more about this fascinating market. While I was working for a little while just before, in between my PhDs and working at the National Museum in Copenhagen, I was very fortunate enough to work for Museum Amager. And one day we got a call from a local man, and he had just been doing a bit of excavations in his cellar. And out came, what you can't see, or those who can, 6 huge cardboard trays full of 16th century stove tiles. This for me is very interesting because it indicates how much there is still to discover of this wonderful market. And I leave you with the pictures, I hope you can see, of De Bentegade, Zutphensgade and Kampensgade. Thank you very much.